Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week, the season is here. People are out shredding, and everyone else is frothing, as it's going to be go time very soon. I'm excited for everyone, but also I'm still figuring out my situation. I mean, will I be able to ski? I know I can go, but this year's going to be all about taking it easy and watching my kid push it. I was planning on snowboarding a shit ton this year, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen because I can't get hurt as I have too much riding on me being healthy. I mean, I'm always on the go these days. Between laundry, kid rides, doctors, meds, dishes, work, dinner, groceries, cleaning, there's just so much to do. And well, getting hurt, having fun, won't cut it this year. So I'm going to take things slow and easy this year while I'm at the summit at Snoqualmie. And this whole cancer thing has been such a wild ride for Ange and I. And I'm going to give you a peek behind the curtain so you can see how bad it sucks to have a wife who's living with cancer. My goal with these updates will be not to repeat the same stories. I don't want to bore you with these terrible details. I might make jokes where I shouldn't, and I'll apologize for them now. The only thing I'm going to try not to do is make you sad, because this can be a sad process, but we're just going to talk about the details, the shit that makes us angry, the shit that's funny, everything but the sad stuff, hopefully. So, this past week, we were looking at having a drain surgically implanted into Ange. This would help out from a complication from a surgery a month ago. The drain has a tube that comes out of her body and it's connected to a drainage bag. Anyways, we were stoked to get the drain in because Ange was in some real 7-level pain at all times because of the abscess inside her. She needed relief. So when we get to the doctors for this procedure, they don't let me go back with her. So they don't give me the instructions on how to care for this medical device. And they tell them all to her, and then minutes after they give her all this important information, they shoot her up with fentanyl and she's out. I meet her about 3 hours later, and what no one prepared us for was the pain of this procedure. Actually, everything that we've gone through so far, it's really fair to say that no one has prepared us for anything. So Ange is now at a 10 pain level, and I'm not sure we should even try to go home because of this pain. The fucked up part about all of this is that we finish and we get sent home not really knowing how to care for this device, and then the guy who scheduled this procedure, well, he's made another appointment for 3 hours from the time we have to leave. So Ange is in pain, but I load her in the car and we start the brutal drive home. Every bump hurts, and the pain is so bad that Ange starts to feel sick. She's going to throw up, so she empties her favorite bag, and she fills it up with puke. We roll up to standstill traffic, I dump the puke, and then we make it home. Ange sleeps, or then just moans in pain a bunch for about 2 hours, and then we go back to the same hospital to meet our surgeon. And this surgeon is a man of few words. He pulls out the staples, he lets us know that this whole thing is supposed to hurt, and we are on our way home. The weekend is full of pain and limited mobility for Ange, but she had a couple friends come over to hang out while I took my kid to his end of the season football party. And a lot of you have reached out to me asking how my kid is dealing with all of this, and I've kept him really informed as things have been happening, and he's surprisingly chill about everything. But then I really have to step back and think about things from his perspective. Because back when I was his age, if you got this diagnosis, it was make-a-wish time. The odds were against you, but not anymore. I mean, my kid has a grandfather living with terminal cancer, and he's going to make it another decade. And Dr. Diamond, our oncologist, he's made it sound like this nightmare could be over by summer. So shit has changed, and I'm of the belief that this emergency surgery and the abscess are going to be worse than the whole chemo part, because it sounds like chemo has changed for the better too. But I say this as there have been so many complications with the surgery, and our surgeon, well, he's acting like he's done with us. When we went in after the drain was put in, he pulled the staples and was like, everything looks great, I'll see you guys in a month. But that's not how his care should be with us. We're going to end up waiting almost 2 months to get into chemo because this guy didn't do the best job on his emergency surgery. How do I know that he didn't do the best job, being that I have no medical experience? Well, I know because if he did his job right, then there wouldn't be all these complications, and we wouldn't be still waiting to start chemo. But to this guy, we really are just a number, and he's not worried about pain or even the cancer. He won't even talk to us about the cancer. It's someone else's job. So right now, we are totally frustrated. We went to our appointment to have the drain removed, but the doctor there saw something that he was concerned about from the initial surgery. Things that Ange has been bringing up for 3 weeks. But instead of listening to what that report said, our doctor decided to keep Ange in pain throughout the weekend and order more tests on Monday. It's like this guy wants to prove he's right instead of minimizing the suffering for his patient that he didn't do the greatest job on. But fuck, what do I know? I'm just a dude with a podcast who has a wife that received some shitty news, and now it's go time. And for my guest this week, it's been go time ever since he was a teenager. Everything Chris Beresford has is self-made. He owns it outright, debt-free, and he bought it the old-fashioned way, through really, really hard work. Chris has pretty much lived his life as a one-man band since he was 13, and he seems to have more help from his friends than his family. And when that happens, well, the outcome usually isn't the American dream. But for Chris, it has been. From sponsored snowboarder to business owner, Chris has always moved in one direction, and that's forward, with all tolls paid. And we find out his crazy story on the podcast, and his story really is a crazy one, rougher than many of the people I've had on the show before. Before we get into it, I want to thank every one of you who've reached out, thought about reaching out, our friends, our family, everyone. I just want to say thank you. So many people want to help, and when we need it, we will ask. We're not sure if we're going to need help, but, everybody who goes through this, I'm sure, does. But until then, your thoughts and prayers and whatever they say after a mass shooting is enough. Finally, I also want to help my social and the show grow through all of this trauma that we're going through. So please follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement and repost my shit on social media if you like it. That really does help the show grow. And I don't even know why I asked, because none of you ever do it. And that's cool. I get it. I probably wouldn't repost the stuff either. But I'm going to ask you to do it. Finally, if you do anything for me, please, please, please support my sponsors who make this show happen. I only work with the best brands, and the best brands are Elan Skis, Stanley, Outdoor Research, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's talk with Chris Beresford. It sounds like you're one of those guys who are naturally gifted and good at everything, and go figure, a lot of my guests happen to be that guy. But when you think about the things that you suck at, what are they?
Music, anything music related. I'd say even in middle school, it was I had a hard time with anything to do with music.
So you can't play any instruments?
Hell no, and nor have I really put in the effort, to be honest. But when you're not into something, but that was part of school, I was all right, I'll give it a fucking honest try, but it just never made sense to me.
Do you have rhythm? Can you dance?
I mean, depends how many beers I have.
I can have 30 beers and I'm still the worst dancer ever.
Yeah, that just means I have the balls to be out there, is really all it is.
Gotcha. And when you're good at a lot of things, and not in anything musical, but based off of what I'm hearing, you're good at a lot of different things, does that automatically make you a hyper-competitive person? Or are you just good at things and you just enjoy them and you don't care to beat everybody?
I mean, it depends. If it's a game of cornhole in the backyard, I want to beat that person that I'm playing. But when it comes to real competitive, snowboard related, we'll say, I was way more competitive when I was a kid. And I would say that was I was competitive against myself because I wanted to put a run down, say, in a USASA contest.
How about playing a game of skate with your buddies?
I would say that's just for fun, but it depends who you're playing too. If you're at the same level as that dude, then yeah, of course you want to beat him. But a lot of my friends have dedicated their life to skating when I didn't do that.
Sure.
Where it was just yeah, I'll play, but I know I don't have a chance.
And then how does this athleticism come to you? Your parents, were they both great athletes?
I actually really don't know that. I would say anything that I was into, I tried at. That would be the best way of saying it. But I do recall in school, it didn't matter if we were playing volleyball in gym class or basketball or baseball, whatever the hell it was. I just would give it an honest. I would try. That's all.
And then I guess speaking of family, you don't know your family's athletic ability.
I was going to say my mom, she got me into the snow side of everything. And my dad was into the motocross. It wasn't standard sports by any means.
Okay. And it starts out great family-wise. It's mom, dad. I think they work for an aerospace company.
Correct.
And life's good for you until your mom gets leukemia and passes away when you're 5 years old. I'm guessing you don't remember much about that, which is good.
No, I don't remember. I mean, dude, I have very little faint memories that you don't even know if they're real in a way.
But you are left living with the pieces. And when your mom passes, is that the downfall of your dad? Was he just so in love with your mom that when she was taken from him, he's destroyed?
100%. I mean, obviously I've learned a lot since then and growing up and becoming my own person and talking to, it was weird. Almost family kept me sheltered in a way. They didn't even want me to know. Over the years, I've learned my mom was the money person. And like my dad would get his paycheck on Friday, give it to my mom, and then my mom would give him his allowance. So once like she passed away, it was unfortunate. And he just didn't know how to manage money simply.
And it also sounds like he found the bottle, and I don't know if he found it after your mom passed or was it just kind of ramped up then.
I have a feeling it was all there the whole time. He just didn't know how to handle it. And I don't blame him for that, especially becoming an adult and realizing like life's a pain in the ass, you know?
Yeah, nothing's easy. And when you have the most important thing taken from you, I can imagine that I can't imagine.
No, exactly.
And what does he do? Does he continue to work or what happens with like his actual life?
So when my mom passed, there was some insurance money and he he basically went into work. This is what I was told. And he was just like, F off. I quit. I'm starting my own business. So like from age 5 to 12, my dad didn't work. So I kind of like had a pretty sick childhood in the sense like I had a new dirt bike. I raced BMX and he just like catered to me and my friends and would drive us around. You know, to look back at it now, I'm like, holy shit, that was insane. And like all my friends love my dad because like their first memories are amazing. He was cooking us cheeseburgers and steak.
But was he drinking the whole time that he was doing that?
No, he's a really good drinker. So like, yeah, he 100% was.
But you guys just didn't know and it just seemed like he was a great dad doing whatever you wanted?
Yeah, it was normal. He's honestly doing a lot better nowadays, so I don't want to like throw him under the bus, but I thought it was normal like for a parent to crack a beer at 8 a.m. I didn't even know. I didn't know anything else, you know?
That is just so crazy to me. But yeah, like if you don't see anything else, you don't know anything else. And when he's drunk, do you ever pay the price? Like, did he have a temper? Did he hit you or any bad shit like that?
He had his moments of like being an asshole, but he never hit me or anything like that. You know, once I was 14 and like he had lost the house that I grew up in, he just didn't pay the mortgage. And yeah, obviously that sucked.
But that's when you were a teenager, right?
Yeah, that was when I was 13 when he lost the house.
Okay.
So that's when my life kind of changed. I got a job at this donut shop in my hometown and I had to start paying for my own food. You know what I mean?
At 13? That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, especially to look back at it. And then, I mean, I was fortunate with my friends. Like, my friends' parents knew what was going on. So, like, they would have me over for dinner and it all seemed normal, to be quite honest.
Before you're a teenager, it's like you have two lives. I mean, you have three. It's like you have your mom for part of it, then she passes, then it's like you and your dad and you guys are the unit up until 13. And there you have money and it seems like everything's good. And I would think the one place where everything normal for you at that point is with sports. And dirt bikes are what your dad does growing up, I would think, and he gets you into it. Did you and your dad ride dirt bikes together? Was it a family thing or was it just something that he put you in?
Yeah. Until he like turned 40, I feel like he just kind of like, that was it. That was his cutoff with the dirt bikes. But it was also probably money too at the time that I didn't necessarily recognize.
Okay.
But he was like Moto dad, like kind of like the soccer mom or dad. That was normal at that time. Like I was at the races and if I didn't win, he'd be pissed at me. But like at a young age, I raced 50 cc's, which are like the smallest bikes that they make.
Yep.
And like I was winning every race that I did. And like it was just, I didn't know any better. Like once they dropped the gate, I just twisted the throttle and I went.
Does everybody recognize that? I mean, is that where your self-confidence and everything is being built because you're good on a motorcycle and everybody's telling you that?
Honestly, I was so naive. I just knew once the gate dropped it, I just went. I didn't know necessarily if I was in first place because there was always people all around the track. I just was trying to go as quick as I could.
Is it one of those sports where you're going to a race each weekend and like you guys go in a caravan and you set up a home base for 2 days and everyone else does too? And it's kind of one big traveling two-stroke circus kind of deal?
Kind of. My hometown's Southwick, Massachusetts, which has like a famous motocross track that's in that town. So raced a lot there and then we would travel around New England. But my moto years were like from around 6 years old through like that 12-year-old. And then I did race here and there. Honestly, I feel like age 16 was the last time I raced. But it was a lot of local races like right there. Pretty much every other weekend. And then there was, I think it was called NEMA, which was one moto association. And then there was NESC, which is New England something. So like there was almost a race every weekend just in my hometown. through the summers, obviously.
And when you go to these races with your dad, is it one of those things where once you guys are set up and you got your pits and everything ready to go, that your dad starts cracking the beer at 8 a.m. and keeps going all weekend long, and that's just a normal thing?
Yeah, but all his buddies were doing the same shit. It wasn't just him.
And I would think that at this point, from 6 to 12, he's providing for you. I mean, he's got that money that he's living off of. So all those other people that are looking, where some people might look at it and be like, oh, this is a problem, but it really doesn't look like a problem because everybody's doing it over the weekends and they might not realize your dad's doing it during the week.
Totally. And I don't know. I feel like the 90s were just different too,
Yeah, but I mean, you were definitely in a unique position where it's almost like going to those races, especially if you're doing well. It's like you can lose yourself in the races themselves, and that's like the good part of the weekend. And then the rest of the time, you almost babysitting your dad?
Yeah, by the time I was really noticing, maybe like around 11, 12, I remember him just being like, he would say his back hurt, but it was really, he was just too fucked up and couldn't get off the couch, So I would go to my neighbor's house and have dinner there. This was like when Nintendo 64 was that was hot. We were playing like 007.
Bond, yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember like, it was just so normal for me to go have like mac and cheese at the neighbors, Like I said, when you don't know anything different, you really just think it's normal.
Yeah, so it doesn't come with any shame or embarrassment or anything like that. That's just how it is.
Honestly, when we lost the house and, you're a teenager and you're meeting girls, I was embarrassed in the sense that like, I didn't have a place to like, oh, I can go hang out at your house, but you're not coming to my spot,
Yeah. And I hate to keep harping on your dad because it does sound like he's changed, but it is such a huge impact in your life. Does any of this impact like the rider, the athlete, or the person that you are?
It just taught me at a young age, like, if you want to do something, you kind of got to figure it out yourself. You can't rely on anybody else, I guess is the simple way of saying it.
And I think that's true for everything, but you learn it the hard way at like 11, 12 years old. And
right.
While this is going to be a cruel question because it's almost at your expense, what's the most embarrassing story around your dad and those Moto weekends? Is there one standout one where you're like, God, that was the fucking worst?
I remember like once I bumped up, so I raced the 50 cc's and then it was 65 cc bikes, which you have to actually start shifting gears at that point. So it's like there's a little more to it. And I maybe got like 12th place the first time I raced on the bigger bike. And he just got so pissed at me. And, that was like also the first year, I would say, snowboarding. And it was so cool for me to like do something for myself. And there was nobody telling me what to do, but I could also do whatever the hell I wanted,
So that's freedom, and your dad's not going to get mad at you with anything in snowboarding.
Totally. He went to one contest that it was like an early season rail jam at Okemo, it's funny. That's like the only time he's ever seen me snowboard.
That is so insane.
And I had my driver's license at that time, but he like drove up separate. And I was at that point like where I was like filming, and to be honest, I was totally sandbagging because I think it was like a $250 to $300 purse, and I was like, well, this could be my paycheck for the week if I go up to that.
So we got to see you win one of those?
Yeah, he saw that. Yep.
And was he impressed, or is it just like, and then just back to his own world?
He really has never really gave a shit, I don't think, about like what I've actually done with my life.
Which is so weird because I know for me, and given I never had the talent that you do in terms of sports, I tried, but I just never was that good. But I always looked to my parents for like that validation that I was doing things right. I looked to my peers as well, but I feel like when they were proud of me, it made me feel really good about things. But you didn't have that experience at all because they almost didn't give a fuck.
I had my grandma though, and my grandma was like a huge part of my life. And once I actually started to get a paycheck from K2 and 32, and I was on the road, but she would like go to the bank and put my checks in my account, and she like understood what I was doing with my life,
But even before she understands what you're doing with the bigger...
No, she knew, like, I don't know, she had a lot of trust in me, which is funny to look back at, where she knew that I wasn't fucking around, simply.
So are there other sports for you? Do you ever play any team sports or skateboard? You do BMX, I believe, or blade or anything?
Yes, I played soccer, and street hockey was a big thing in my hometown. So like basically we just ran around a basketball court that had hockey boards up. And I played pond hockey, but not like on an actual team. But like soccer, I was on a traveling team, but to look back at it now, it's like I didn't make it to many of the fucking games because he was too shit-faced.
Oh, man. It's funny that you can laugh about it now, but it's just like, it seems like it would be so difficult, but then hearing you talk about it, it doesn't seem that difficult.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot at a young age, and I have friends that turned 30 and they were still like, it's almost like where I was at 12, 13, 14. It was like where some of my friends are at 30 years old, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about food at 13 years old, which is crazy to me. And yeah, most people don't have to do that until much later, and it's usually
Yeah.
easy for them. But you got into skiing through your mom, and that happens when you're really, really young. How does skiing progress? Because I think you start snowboarding in 6th grade, but do you get to ski a little bit before you start snowboarding?
Yeah. Like I skied, like I had a season pass at Blandford ski area, and my grandma always took care of that. That was like one of my Christmas gifts. And I skied every winter until I started snowboarding.
When you first see snowboarding, is it like something that you're like, I'm going to do that, and you go rent a board and go straight from there?
Yeah, well, my cousin, he's a couple years older than me, and then my buddy Austin Granger, and then I had another cousin. They were snowboarding, and I was like, they just look cool. They look cooler to me, and this was like before shape skis, and they're like using their snowboards to build the jump, where I'm there without a shovel, like using my hands, you know? They were
Right.
using the nose of their board. And it was one of those things, the first day I rented a board, it was like a Burtner Air, probably like a 1990, and I couldn't make it 3 feet, and the following season, I was so committed. My grandma bought me a setup. And first run, I think because I mentally thought about it so much for that whole summer, I went top to bottom. It was a bunny slope, but I went top to bottom without falling because I think I was so mentally pissed at myself for not being able to do it.
So you figured out the mechanics in your head all summer long and then put it to snow and it worked?
Yeah. I'm one of those people. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start things out with Elan Skis. And there are so many reasons to ski on Elan. First and foremost, skis made in the Slovenian Alps by skiers truly do outperform skis made in sweatshops that are only concerned about making a profit. And my ripsticks are proof. The fit and finish is flawless on these skis, and you can put them up against any ski on the wall and you will notice the difference in quality. Nothing comes close to an Elan. The second reason to ski Elan is because they'll make you a better skier. Just demo a pair and you'll understand in a run or two why Elans are so much better. The third reason is the factory itself. It houses its own solar plant that powers the factory, and as of July, the factory is run 100% off of renewable energy sources, making Elan arguably the most responsible supplier in all of snow. And the final reason to support Elan? Well, they support great properties in snow like this podcast. So, when you're looking to pick up new skis this year, please head over to elan.com and see what the best is. My next sponsor is Outdoor Research, and I've loved this brand for a long time. See, I live in Seattle, and OR is based in Seattle too, for over 40 years. And if you live in the Pacific Northwest, you know the weather plays a big role in our lives, and if you don't have the best gear, you are screwed. So I've always used OR because everyone knows that you're not going to get better designed and functional gear for all conditions. But what I'm excited about is that the OR I'm working with today is so much different than the brand I worked with just 5 years ago. I mean, they still have the best materials and the most talented designers in the game, but now the fits, the styles, and colorways have changed. It's no longer all about mountaineering, although they still make the best-in-class gear for mountaineers. I was able to get a sneak peek of the new line, and now OR has something for everyone. The park kid, the backcountry rider, the serious mountaineer, the resort skier. It's a refreshing change that's all happening right now. So when you're looking for the best in your winter gear, look no further than OR. You'll find the new fits, colors, and styles over at outdoorresearch.com. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. Since 2006, 10 Barrel has been brewing the country's best beers, and they don't stop with just beer. Between their cocktails in a can that feature real hard A and they pack a punch, their clean line seltzers, which I've been drinking a ton lately, and their Profuse Juice IPA and Pilsner, which are my go-tos when it comes to their beers, I can't get enough 10 Barrel. And I know they have some flavors that you're going to love as well. You just need to try one. So next time you're at the store, please pick up a 6-pack of 10 Barrel. To find out more about the beer, the athletes, the events, and all things 10 Barrel, head on over to 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. And then I would think that your progression in snowboarding is driven by two things. Like I would think the first thing is getting on your snowboard makes you forget about all the other bullshit in life, I would think.
Yeah, but I didn't recognize that at the time. Honestly, I've noticed it more like with starting a business and just mountain biking. It's like when I get that maybe 30 seconds of downhill where you're just focused 30, 40 feet ahead of you. And I'm like, holy shit, like that's what I needed today, you know?
Yep. And I would think the second thing that motivates you, because you didn't really realize the first part when you were younger, but the second thing is your crew. Because you grow up riding with Austin Grenier and Scott Stevens. And were you guys all Groms together? And does that push you as well?
Yeah. I mean, Scott was always like the dude. Like he was better than all of us. And he was also crazier. Say the tabletop that they built at our local hill, it was like maybe a 12 to 15 foot actual gap to the sweet spot. Scott was going 30 feet off of the damn thing.
Okay.
And just watching him, and like he was doing 720s when, you know, like my crew. So Scott's from Westfield, Mass, which is the town over. And me and Austin are from Southwick. Scott and his crew, they would go to High Cascade. So they knew a bit more than us, you know?
Yeah, they just lived in the scene a little bit more.
Yeah, like they were dangling handkerchiefs from their fucking pants. And like, you know, they like we were just kids from Southwick, and we saw the local dudes at our hill. We thought they were cool, but Scott and Ross, they were seeing the pros at High Cascade, you know?
Yeah. And through all of this, because this is when you lose the house, do you lose it pretty much overnight? Like you kind of come home one day and your dad's like, we got to move?
Yeah, I mean, he fucked up there. And then we moved into this like ladies' basement. And it was like maybe like a 400 square foot like basement apartment. You know, it was maybe 600 max. It was tiny.
Did you only move once?
Yeah, so I started living with my grandma after that.
I came home to something similar once. We lost our house when I was 18, but it was a way different situation for me because I had two houses to move to. Like my mom and dad split up at the same time. So that shit to me was more embarrassing. But like we talked about a little earlier, for you, is that totally scary? Like when you have to think about getting food at 13 and 14, is that like creating stress for you?
Like I said, there was a lot of friends, family help. At the time too, like getting that job, that meant I could like in 1 week, I'd work 3 nights. Like I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 hours after school, but it was enough for a lift ticket. I will say my grandma was probably helping a little bit more than I think, you know, to look back at it. But it was still like, I totally was like getting my own food.
Then I think about shit like insurance. Do you even have that?
You know, I think because we were like low income, it was like considered mass health. It was kind of like, basically, you're on like welfare of insurance in a way.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any side hustles or anything going on where you can make extra money other than just work? Because I'm sure at this point, money has taken on a totally different meaning to you.
I learned what a dollar is worth at a really young age. And that's kind of like through life, even now, like my friends will make fun of me. They're like, you're such a fucking cheap ass. But it's like, I'll never forget those. It's those early days is what made me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they're what create the drive, and all of that stuff happens so early for you.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I think about it and we can look back. There's all sorts of people that have daddy issues because they didn't grow up with a dad and now they're dancing on stage 3 or they're living a life of crime or they just have to deal with it. But when you look back and not having a mom, how does that affect a kid?
Through that age until I was 13 in the house, my dad, he'd pick me up from school. He'd be pulling a trailer with his Toyota 4Runner and we'd go ride dirt bikes. We were always doing shit. Which is like also crazy that like he has had multiple DUIs, but like surprised there wasn't more, you know?
Because he's drinking every day, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I guess you're a smart kid, and while there wasn't always a plan back then, was the goal for you to save up money and when you turn 16, buy a car and then you can go snowboard or do whatever you want because you have no rules?
Yeah, my grandma actually co-signed for a $1,000 loan when I was getting my license, and I got an '88 Honda Accord. And you know, I remember being pissed. I don't know if pissed is the right word, more than jealous, because a lot of my friends did get their first car. It was like a hand-me-down from their mom, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's how most people live, or like half the people at least live.
Yeah, but I will say I also learned what interest was, and you know, like I learned all that shit at a young age too. And I remember being pissed because like that loan, I think it was a year loan, and it was like I had to pay $40 fucking in interest, and I was like, that is insane to me that I have to pay more money. You know?
So does that mean now in life, when you realize that at a young age, like all your purchases now, you make like flat out, like you're a homeowner, do you pay your home off?
Yeah, I did. Luckily, I bought in Salt Lake in 2013, and obviously, like prices, they were affordable then.
But I mean, is that your goal with everything? Like, hey, I don't ever want to have a payment and no one can ever take this from me?
Yes, I'm pretty debt free. at this point in my life.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's like you don't want
Yeah.
anybody to be able to take something from you, and they can't when it's paid off.
Well, with the Salt Lake, the house I live in, like my accountant was like, "Oh, you should invest and do that," and I was like, "Dude, I'll start doing that once the house is paid off because this is what will make me feel free, and then I'll move forward."
Yeah, and it's funny how people, financial advisors like that, they have that mentality because they've never lived your life and they don't know what makes you tick.
Yeah, totally. I even told him, I was like, when I drained my account to pay my house off, I was like, this is what will fire me up to keep hustling.
Yeah, because you have nothing and you got to build it back up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And now I'm starting it all over. I'm actually building a cabin up in Wyoming right now. So it's funny.
Oh, nice, man. Well, congrats on that. But you get your license, and does that mean you, Scott, and Austin start going to Mount Snow because they have a sick park?
Yep. We had our buddy Rob Bro. He's another, I mean, we have a pretty big crew that we all started with, but he is a year older and he would drive us up to Mount Snow, Stratton, Okemo. I don't even know how we did it because we were so focused on filming that we would sneak up and just hike up to the park and then just hike whatever, a jump or rails or ride. Like Okemo had a sick half pipe back then.
So whatever you could do that was free is what you were doing?
Yeah, I'm sure there was people noticing, but we weren't causing any harm. And I'm sure the older dudes that were running the parks and stuff, they were like, oh, these guys, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, there's something to be said for people that are willing to sweat and really work for it and just love it.
Right.
And you can see your passion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do recall, I want to say one time it was Okemo was maybe doing a Form Youngblood contest, but you were supposed to buy a day ticket and then it was free to enter the contest. But none of us had that 50 or $60. And if we did, that was a large amount of money. So we all hiked up through the woods to get up. And their park was kind of mid-mountain. I want to say maybe Scott even won it that time. Then the 10% rule was not in effect at that point either.
Is this around the time that you guys meet Grenier?
So yeah, Grenier was probably 16, 17. He was going to Mount Snow Academy and his dad is smart and bought a condo up there. And that's, I would say, right around there.
And it sounds like that he had his own place and it was either he was sliding rails with no gloves on or he was a cloud of smoke. And then were you guys hanging out at his place when you guys weren't on the hill?
Yeah, a little bit. He had his own friend group at that time. And yeah, he was smoking a lot of weed. And I mean, Scott was the dude that he was just a snowboard nerd at that point. And I think that woke Grenier up. He's like, holy shit, he's not playing around. He wants to do this, not just until he's 18. He's pushing it to become a professional snowboarder. And if it doesn't happen, he'll walk away knowing he gave it 110%,
Yeah. Would you say that Scott is still a snowboard nerd?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Chris had his weed phase going on. I think that eventually transitions out. How about you guys? Was there a weed or an alcohol phase with you guys, or was it more just kids having fun?
I don't know why, but weed was never a thing in our group. And then there was the classic high school parties, slugging beers. But Scott was honestly the most focused out of us. Me and Austin and our crew, we like the high school party scene,
Okay. But do you ever consider the alcohol, seeing your dad drink a lot and all the damage it can do? Did you ever think about that while you were drinking and hey, I better check myself, or was that never a thought?
Yeah, 100. My dad was offering me beers when I was, 15, 16. Yeah, if you want to have one. And I didn't have my first beer with my dad until I was 21. And that was obviously all on me. When you see somebody fucking up, it's there's two ways. You can either join them or learn from them. And I was I just watched, and I was I don't want to do that. And through probably age 24, I was pretty bummed with my dad. But then once life starts happening and getting older, you just start to realize you're dude, I don't know what I would have done or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, his choices were not to make your life tough or to make life difficult for anyone. His choices were to cope.
Totally. Yeah, and it's just he got in a rut that it just got deeper and deeper and he lost everything.
That's not going to happen to you. And as snowboarding gets more serious, vices, I think, take the back seat, at least for your whole crew. And I'm thinking Grenier more than everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, Grenier is different because he was making good money. My snowboard career was enough to do it, pay rent, and eat. I wasn't buying a house or a new car on it,
Right. His took off faster and definitely got way bigger. But
Yeah.
back in those early days, you guys are kind of the pioneers of filming. Like you were putting up edits before YouTube.
Yeah.
Before anybody in snowboarding was putting up edits. How did that all work?
Our buddy Roger, he started this wax company, Magical Go-Go. And I don't even really know how it came about, but he had a QuickTime player on his website. And we would just make these edits that are like, if you were to look back at them, it looks like it's on a flip phone of some sort.
Sure.
I had no clue, but over the years, there's so many kids that have came up to me that were like, yeah, we used to go on Magical Go-Go every day hoping you guys put a new edit out.
I mean, it's amazing. And there was never anything else for people to look at. So it was like you were the market right there if people knew about it.
Yeah.
When you're shooting back then, was there ever a plan or was it all kind of just spontaneous adventure?
Oh, we were just winging it. We were having fun. That was really it. Because there was like filming for our Sponsor Me tapes, and that's where you wanted to do the 900. But when we were making those, like what you would call a YouTube edit now, that was our average day of snowboarding, doing tail blocks and like just having fun. It was like doing it all for the right reason, you know?
Yeah, and I would think back then it's just like kids going out in the streets having adventures. You know, it's like there's all kinds of shit going on. If you want to break a bottle against the wall, you're going to. You'll all laugh about it and then go to the next spot or do whatever you're going to do.
Right.
When that's happening, all kinds of things can happen, especially in cities. What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you in the streets?
In East Coast, we never had any issues. People were just like, it's fucking cold out. What are you idiots doing? You know? Yeah. I never had any issues with like people trying to rob us or anything. I know there was one time we were in Hartford, Connecticut, and this was filming for Think Think, but we were in a sketchy, like really hood zone, and like everybody was just hyped. And like my buddy had at the time one of the nice cameras with like, you know, like the $3,000 fisheye lens.
Yeah.
We were like on edge, but I got a clip and we got in the car and left.
How about cool moments? Have you had one of those experiences where there's like 100 school kids cheering you on as you're hitting a rail?
No, I can't say that, unfortunately.
No, I love seeing those clips. They're always so fun.
I do too. I feel like if that was actually happening, I would put so much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
You know? I'm not like a big pressure guy. I like to put my own pressure on myself. And like, honestly, it all just comes down to focus, especially like when it comes to street clips. At least that's what I found.
And then in terms of life, I mean, when high school ends, you're going to do community college and work at a shop. What's the rest of your crew doing with their lives? Have they already kind of moved out west and are focusing on pro careers?
Yeah. So everybody moved to Salt Lake. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I knew I was on their level of riding, but nobody was making it. Like, people were getting like free gear, you know? So it was like, my focus didn't change until second year of community college. And I was working at Fat Tracks, which is a snowboard shop based out of Massachusetts. And I don't know. It just like I watched, I believe it was Love Hate came out.
Okay.
If you're familiar. And
Mikey, yeah.
Yeah. And I knew like some of the shit they were doing was like above my pay grade, but I felt like I was there in a lot of ways too. And like that's kind of where my gear started turning. And then I got a phone call from Scott. He's like, High Cascade is looking for some coaches this year. And you know how life goes. Everything happens so quick. It's like you sit there and you're like, fuck, what am I doing? What am I doing? And then like 5 years goes by because you like direction changed and you just like head down, keep moving forward.
Yeah. And when I think of that phone call from Scott, who gets you to High Cascade, I'm sure you look at this as a game-changing moment in your life and you owe Scott forever. But that's really what changes everything for you in life, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first year there, I was a coach. Each session I was in charge of 7 kids, but I'm not going to lie, I was a kid just at camp also.
Yeah, like you were able to snowboard in the summer where normally you're at a shop.
Yeah, I was totally just like in awe. I don't know, like I wish I got to do it as a kid, but whatever. Being 20 or 21 my first summer, I'll take it.
Do you realize when you go for that first summer that you're going to end up going all in snowboarding and you just have to find out where you fit within that world?
No, hell no. Like meeting Jesse Burtner, that was kind of like, well, I guess I could go one step back. I was riding ride boards just through the rep on the East Coast. And then I think Lance Hacker had just started working for K2 and Robbie Sell maybe was like, oh, you should hook this guy up with some boards. And that's where my whole K2 introduction happened.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about all the different things that happened at Hood. And my timeline is a little bit wrong. So I have Jesse before your K2 stuff. But it doesn't matter because we're going to talk about your camp roots. So you come into camp and you meet Jesse. And Jesse's the reason for you being in 5 or so Think Tank movies. But
Yeah.
how do you get invited into Jesse's crew?
I mean, our style of snowboarding, it just made sense. And that's what I was into. It's like for every real trick that I did, I wanted to do like 4 what we'd call think tank tricks, you know?
Okay.
It's truly just like what I enjoyed doing. It was fun, like dicking around and kind of doing an NBD. You know, it's like, oh, nobody's ever tried this or done this. Or just throwing a new twist on something that you saw like Gus Angle do. It was exciting for me. And like hitting a bigger kink rail year after year, it's like, yeah, I know I can do it, but it's like I don't sleep the night before, you know?
Right. So you guys are all on the same page of making snowboarding smaller and more fun and not being all about the super pro.
Totally. And like, of course, like I wanted to do the double backflip and do a couple 720s just so I like felt like I was proving myself to that core community. Oh, I can do this too, but it's not necessarily what I enjoyed about it.
I mean, and what's the mindset when you hook up with Jesse and then you get invited to the Think Tank crew? And I'm sure you're all fired up and everything's going on in your brain of what you're going to do for this first film project. Do you have spots and a game plan and everything ready for the first time when you go to Think Tank to shoot?
I mean, I remember that very well. It was in November, probably right around this time. It was for Stack Footy. Maybe it was 06, 07.
I think that sounds about right.
Yeah. He was like, hey, hit up K2 and meet us up and like fly into Anchorage. And it was like December 2nd. It was Genovese, Burtner, and Yoshida.
Okay.
I was like a deer in headlights. I didn't know what the hell I was in for. I was nervous. That whole video part, I haven't watched it in a while, but I just wasn't myself yet. I wasn't around my people. You know, it was like people that I looked up to. So you're never like running at full capacity.
And you're around these legendary people. I mean, Jesse especially, you know, based on his creativity, his marketing, his eye, his passion, all the different things that dude brings to the table. And you meet him so early in your career. What do you learn from a guy like that?
You can do what you like in life, really. That was like a huge eye-opening experience for me where I was like, hold on, like you guys don't have jobs. Like this is what you do. Like him and Pika, you know?
Yep.
They made snowboard films and like they were doing okay. They weren't like killing it, but they were doing exactly what they wanted to be doing. And that was like super inspiring to me.
So the whole follow your passion thing, regardless of what anybody else thinks, is kind of what you learned from Jesse. Like you can do it how you want to do it.
100%. I mean, I was like, hold on, you own a house. And at the time he had a Subaru Impreza. He had won like Vans Triple Crown Big Air. And like, that's what he did with the money is bought that car. And I had never met or, you know, been around somebody like that.
Now it's time for my second round of sponsors. And I'm going to start out with Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Peter Glenn has been getting people out on the mountain for over 70 years. And they're known for their best-in-class service, both in-store and online. Peter Glenn isn't a giant retailer trying to take over the industry. They're the same mom-and-pop shop that has cared about you and your family having the best experience on the hill as possible. The staff knows what they are talking about, and they offer free shipping on orders over $50. They will match any reputable dealer's price online or in-store, and the return policy is easy, because the last thing Peter Glenn wants to do is make your shopping experience a hassle. So the next time you're buying gear, please check out the retailer that supports this podcast and the history of these sports by heading on over to peterglenn.com. Next up is Stanley, and you know them as the brand that invented the category of keeping your drinks hot or cold. You know, Stanley's the brand with that iconic green bottle that kept your grandpa's coffee hot all day long. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle along with so many other products. Think food storage, coolers and jugs, camp cookware. They have something for everyone's adventure, and it's not overpriced like the competition. Stanley takes pride in delivering what it always has, the best in quality at a fair price. And anyone who's used the product will tell you, nothing comes close to a Stanley. And for listening to this podcast, Stanley is going to give you the best discount you'll find anywhere. All you need to do is head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and when you check out, enter the code DRINKFAST. That's all one word, all lowercase at checkout, and you'll get 30% off your entire order. If you spend over $75, I'll throw in a limited edition Powell Movement beanie. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. So that whole think tank time is definitely directly tied to camp. And we've talked about how K2 connections start at camp, and they start with Lance Hacker.
Yeah.
K2 is all about big budgets. They sell to everyone. They create a lot of opportunities for riders. They aren't as core as some other brands because they make skis. Does that matter to you at all?
No, I honestly never like jumped into whatever trend was hot. I felt like I fit K2 because I wanted to just be a snowboarder. I didn't need to get tattoos to be a snowboarder or ride a Harley. I felt like I fit that brand, and that's where I wanted to be.
And that's kind of the coolest thing about you and your crew is like you have all of these people that went to different brands, and you probably could have gotten on a more core brand with some of the people that you're friends with. But you went to K2 when no one else was doing that and kind of created your own path with that brand.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of thought. It was more, I really just felt like that's where I was supposed to be.
And then with the opportunities that K2 provided you, like what were the coolest things that you had the opportunity to do on that brand?
Oh, I got to travel the world.
I mean, you get to go Japan, Alaska, all over the place?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been to New Zealand and Australia, but pretty much everywhere else.
Well, that's amazing. And then you had the Baker House there. I think you knocked yourself out at the Baker House at one point.
Oh, I don't know what the zone's called, but I did go knee to face in the backcountry. I landed in Jake Kuzik's bomb hole, and I got all fucked up. Yeah, bit through my tongue and my lip.
With the injuries and things like that, because you had a few, I think you hurt your knee over the years and you bit through your lip and your tongue. And we talked about insurance and you being on the mass insurance program when you were a kid. But as an adult, are you out there paying for personal insurance or are you just kind of sucking up these injuries?
I mean, I was bullshitting, to be honest. I was on Mass Health until I was 26.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Until I bought my house, honestly. I was still a Massachusetts resident, even though I was living in Salt Lake.
Okay. And then with K2, what was your best money year?
I was making $1,000 a month. That was it.
Okay, so you're making $12,000 a year. But the thing with you is that every dollar matters and you're not going to waste money on bullshit. Yeah. So when you're making $12,000, are you able to save like 7 of that?
I was paying rent. No. And I was getting also $1,000 a month from 32. Well, shit, maybe not in the early years. That's what I remember. But I feel like as soon as Dang started happening, that's when I actually started making that $1,000 from each brand. And it was just funny because my focuses were changing at that time.
Yeah, it's like you're going into debt to be a snowboarder in the beginning. And then when Dang starts hitting, then the snowboard companies want to pay you and everything's coming in all at once.
Yeah. And I had like 2 years of making the $24,000. And I feel like K2, there were still incentives. And I think the last year or two when Kevin Winkle was there, I was like, dude, I'm going to do my job. Just throw in that extra $3,000 or something,
Yeah. And Kevin was cool. He probably hooked you up.
Yeah. He did it. Because I mean, like, why the hell would I go out filming and not get a photo when there's a photographer there?
Right. Yeah, totally.
It's like, I like getting photos too.
One thing that's totally strange to me is that you're getting paid, but you aren't a pro. And was that a goal of yours to get the title of being named pro, or is it more just I want to be paid to ride?
I mean, shit, it would have been cool. I almost made it pro on K2. I was in the catalog.
But I mean, what does that even fucking mean? You almost made it pro for K2. If you made it pro, would anything have changed with what you were doing?
No, hell no. It wouldn't have at all.
So it's just like the brand has the power to call you a pro and it doesn't really matter. You could be making big money, but still be an AM.
Yeah, totally. Or making less money and still be a pro.
Is that frustrating?
No, not at all. I think I was a little burnt, but like to look back at it, K2 just wasn't in a great spot. And I want to say 2014-ish, they wanted to cut my pay down to $5,000 a year. I just said, I'm done. And that was that.
Yeah, it's not worth it at that point.
Yeah, and like everything was changing, in like 2013, 14, it was like, I knew Instagram was the future. And I talked to Hunter actually, and I was like, how about getting a little budget so I can give my friend that I cruise in Brighton with like $40 for film me for 5 laps, Yeah,
it's nothing.
There was nothing set in stone. Like he didn't understand, but that would have been cool.
Yeah, and you would have been on the forefront of creating content for that platform. Right, it would have helped K2.
Right. And it's just funny. I'm like so happy that I was correct.
Yeah. You weren't on K2 boots. And did they ever want you head to toe? And if you were head to toe, would it have been easier to get made pro?
There wasn't outerwear at the time. I know there was like talk of bringing it back, but I don't think that had anything to do with it.
But your brute brand was 32. And was that a connection made at camp or was that a Grenier intro or how did you get on 32?
So Grenier and Scott were on and it was basically a phone call. It was either me or Brandon Cocard we were going to get on. And I picked up the phone and Brandon didn't pick up the phone. That's how that happened. And they flew me out to Bear. Like it must have been early, like December or something. And like literally it flew out overnight, red eye, and then filmed like a minute video part just in the park there. Like it all happened in 36 hours. And I was on 32.
I'm going to guess that your worst experience with 32 was around the time that you dropped maybe arguably one of your best video parts. You open up Brain Dead Heart Attack, and once that movie comes out, you get dropped. What was that all about?
No, I mean, that sucked for sure. I mean, getting dropped beats up your self-worth,
Yeah, I mean, even as a podcaster, it does.
Totally. Yeah. You're just like, I don't know. I felt like I was trying. I was putting in the effort. Like I was filming exactly what I wanted to be doing, which that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, it's just going to give you joy.
Right.
When you get dropped, does that make you bitter like with 32, or is it just like you move on?
Well, I guess the nice part about it wasn't just me. A handful of other people got dropped too.
So it's a money thing and you can see the writing on the wall there?
Yeah, I mean, it sucked because Brian Cook at 32, he's like, you should just focus on your brand and just do that. And in my mind, that pissed me off because like, I fucking love snowboarding. It hurt, it hurt my feelings.
Yeah, I can imagine because like you still have more in the tank.
Totally. I will say after just not getting paid, like I'm coming on like almost 10 years of not getting paid to snowboard. And it's like those 3 years after not getting paid, I felt like that's where I kind of hit my, I felt the best on my snowboard.
The 3 years where you don't have 32, you don't have K2, but you're focused on snowboarding and dang?
Yeah, I just was doing it my way and like, I didn't give a fuck. It was like fun to like post Instagram content and like get my friends psyched that I'm still doing it. And this will be like my 9th season of not being a quote unquote sponsored snowboarder. And like, I still enjoy it. And I just dumb it down. I just do like the basic tricks as good as I can.
It's working for you and you've got a place in the snowboard world. But the reason you have a place in the snowboard world goes back to camp because we were talking about all the connections and all the things that camp gave you. But really, the most important thing it did was it gave you the inspiration to create your brand, Dang Shades. Did you come into camp that first summer with some blank sunglasses and a plan to sticker them? Or does that happen in year 2?
That was year 2. So first year, I was getting some special blend flow from the East Coast rep. I'm trying to think of his last name, but his name's Matt. He works for Burtner. I'm an idiot. But I basically went home at the end of the summer and I didn't even own a pair of snowboard pants going into that next season. I just sold everything and I was like, holy shit. Like if I actually had a product I could consistently sell, it's possible I could have a down payment for a newer car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went in and that following season and me and my buddy Rob bought a die cut machine and I was making stickers that said dang loose because it was like opposite. We're East Coast. It's icy. It is not Hawaii. There was no rhyme or reason for it. I just was into that.
The stupid joke, kind of?
Yeah, totally. It was just, we're dang loose. I don't know. There was really nothing more than that. And then I was super into like, I fucking don't even want to say, I'm not even going to say the brand name, but I was into the frog skins.
Okay.
And I knew that was like, it wasn't popular in like the world that, it was just like the core snowboard, like Danny Cass and shit was wearing them. And I was into it.
They were coming back. They were huge in 89, 90, and they're coming back again.
Yeah. And I just used Google and found some like dead stock on Google that I bought 72 pair or something. And I used the die cut machine. I like kind of became a surgeon when it came to making mini die cuts and just started slapping them on the lens.
This is like 2007-ish, I feel like. And
yep.
Pit Viper hasn't even been thought about at this point. Are you the first independent brand like that?
I mean, I don't know. I have no clue. But as far as, doing that, and it's funny, like how big Pit Vipers got over the years. But yeah, I was early on in that affordable brand name sunglass world,
You were always affordable. I can't say they were as affordable as you because, you're still buying Pit Vipers for $60 to $100, I feel like. But you were selling $20 sunglasses, right?
Yeah, $20. But I mean, I was stoked on making an extra $40. Like I didn't have a big picture in my mind.
And just the way that you do things, it's never like you're trying to get rich. It's like you're creating products that you would want to buy that's like a good value and a good product that you would personally buy because of the price. And if you're willing to buy it and it's decent, then other people are going to be willing to buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of exactly, I mean, I've taken a few more risks over the years, but that's been my deal. It's like, if I want it, I'm sure somebody else might too.
Yeah. And then when you think about the growth of the brand, you get those 72 pair and you're like, oh, I'm going to make a couple grand selling these the first year. And then after you do that, you're like, holy shit, I've got to buy more of these dead stock because I can't even keep them in inventory per se.
I was actually reordering from High Cascade and getting them sent to the main office, just the blanks.
Oh, because you just couldn't keep them in stock. You're killing it.
That summer, yeah. It was funny because I didn't bring the die cut machine with me. I just pre-cut a bunch of sheets. So I was just weeding as I was doing them. Like I probably had pre-cut like the mini dang stickers, like maybe 200 to 300 of them. And I was like, there's no fucking way I'll go through these. But I was like, it's better to have more than not enough.
And then you see that and you realize like, holy shit, I'm doing this every summer. Is that when you like build a website and start dang from the ground up?
I didn't build a website for maybe the next 2 years. It was mainly just High Cascade. But I did create a PayPal link on my MySpace, on my personal page. So there was A, B, or C. It was one photo that I had up. And you could just pick A, B, or C, and you just click buy now.
So you're like the first direct-to-consumer within the industry as well.
In a weird way, yes, maybe. I don't know.
So it's a lot of things. I mean, because like you're a rider-owned business, and they usually don't go as well as you've gone over the past 10 years. Or it's more than 10 years now.
15.
Jesus. Wow. It's amazing that you're still killing it. And you're going into different product lines, it seems like, because you've got goggles now with magnets, which we'll talk about. But when you think about the growth and you think about your investment, what's the first year that you have to put a shit ton of your own money into it and you're just like, I hope this thing works?
Yeah, that was 2010, I believe. The minimums were 1,200 pair, and I could split that up into 4 different color schemes between like frame and lens. And my girlfriend at the time, she was basically just like, she's like, stop being a pussy. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I like maxed out a credit card that I had. And I had the actual cash to front it, but I literally emailed my order and emailed my credit card number expiration, like it wasn't legit. And I was like, here we go. And the shit showed up 3 months later.
You're praying that it's going to work.
Yeah. But it was like, that was the risk. That was the original, like, all right, we're going in. And that's when like all the logos were actually printed. But I somehow managed to source that same dead stock mold that I was using where I was putting the stickers. And I found the factory to do it.
Nice. And then when you have a company like this and you're kind of learning as you go, while you're smart and trying to be safe, what's the biggest mistake you made?
I mean, we'll go back to that frog skin brand. They sued me. And that was like literally 2 months after I bought my house. I didn't know. I had no clue what I was doing. Like when I look back at my childhood, I was the kid they were marketing to. So like, I didn't know like I could grow something that they would notice,
Yeah, and while getting sued by a brand like that is scary, and we won't even say who they are.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But I just like, fuck them, like they didn't have to come at me as hard as they did.
You were just a little guy, man. You were like easy pickings. Like if they wanted to just destroy you, they could have, but they did hurt you a bit. The funny thing is that they come after you, but when they sue you, does it almost help the brand more than anything else because it gets you so much press and everybody's talking about it?
I think 100%, but at the time, it sure as hell didn't feel like that.
Right.
I thought everything I'd worked for in my life was that home and like the down payment on that. And it was like, I thought I was losing it all. So like that winter fucking sucked. And that all happened in January of 2014.
So you're able to weather that storm and you probably have to eat a whole bunch of sunglasses and then you learn a big lesson that you're going to make sure that you cover all your bases before you produce a product.
For sure.
Another hiccup that I don't know if was a big hiccup to the brand, but I received a pair of K2 dang shades that were really, really dark. There was a collab, a K2 binding and dang shade binding. And then the sunglasses that I received because they were freebies that Pete Mullenbach had given me, I put them on and I felt like I was seeing black. I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. Was that a big issue?
Super dark?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was just a fuck up.
Okay.
That was like still the early times when I wasn't on that tech side. I was more on the fashion side. I wasn't like really doing my homework with lenses, and they'd be great up at Mount Hood. I'll tell you that.
Right. But that was beautiful because they were already paid for because you had sold them to K2, I think, before they even arrived.
No, actually. They didn't actually pay for those. I did. That was out of my pocket.
What?
Or they maybe gave me half of it. And I was doing cost on them. I think it was like 1,200, or I don't remember exactly. It wasn't that like a huge investment.
But those little hiccups, I guess, are okay when you have the low price points that you have.
Yeah.
And it allows you to eat the product if you need to. But when I'm thinking about sunglasses, when I'm buying a brand, say Spy, because they used to sponsor the show a long time ago.
Yeah.
How much more does it cost them to make a premium pair of sunglasses compared to making a premium pair of Dang?
I bet they're probably at that like $18 price point, their cost.
So they're not making glasses that are that much better than yours in terms of cost.
No. And what's funny is like most people with like a high-end Smith or Spy, whatever, like something they paid well over $100 for, their lenses are just fucking fingerprinted and greasy and face slime. They're not getting what they're paying for out of them if you're not keeping the lenses clean.
And what's really interesting in the whole goggle world, which is a place that you play now because I've seen the magnetic goggles you've had and you've had other ones as well, is in the past 5 years, it seems like anybody can make an open mold goggle, put nothing back into the sport, and make some money off of those models. Is that what's happening in the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, all the Instagram ads you get nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks because it's not snowboarding or skiing. It's coming from these people that just see dollar signs. But fuck, it's the world we live in.
Yeah, and I think the only bad thing those people are doing is they're not putting back into the sports, because I look at what you're doing and you're not taking from culture. You're kind of putting back into culture.
Yeah.
You're creating content. You've lived this your whole life. Those brands don't do anything but take. They're going to take the consumer's money. They're going to take from the culture. They're not going to give anything back. And eventually that's going to screw a lot of people. I feel like all these big brands, their sales are going to go down because of it. The beauty of where you are is that you're priced where you're playing at the same level of these people, but you have a core product.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sticking to my roots, and it's like my product has gotten way better over the years, obviously. And I see those companies. My buddy Bodie actually got hit up from one of them, and he was like, yeah, I'll do it. But he just threw out an insane number. And they were like, we can just pay you for like a post here and there. And he was like, fuck that. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like not only selling out to yourself, but selling out the sport as well if you're going to do that.
Yeah. And it ended up working out for him. But it was just funny because he was talking to me about it. I don't know. I also like hearing those numbers, seeing what like companies are offering.
Yeah. It's good to see where you play in that playing field as well.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, there's some big names out there that I would like to offer what I can do, but the goggle world is hard. Like the snow industry in general. It's like you have 2.5 months to sell, and if it doesn't snow that year, like you're fucked.
Yep. You're lucky that you have the counter seasonal business of sunglasses where you can sell all year long and everybody in the world needs sunglasses.
Yeah, that's how I make a living, is sunglasses. The goggles is just like, I was bored in the fall. This was maybe 2014, 15. I was like, fuck, I'm going to make some goggles. They were absolute dog shit, but I came out with goggles, and the team was into them because it was like, I made a product, but when I look back at them, I'm like, all right, I didn't do this right.
The beauty of it is that you can sell them at a price point that's not going to piss anybody off when they buy it.
Yeah. I think my first goggle, it was retailing at like $60. You got a lens with it too.
Yeah, you get what you pay for, and people are going to be stoked. And then as your quality goes up, people are going to just be more invested in the dang brand. What you're doing is kind of building a little empire for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's so awesome because like you're the American dream. You found your passion. You went all in on it. You risked everything you had like in your entire life to make this thing go, and it's going. And when you think about the business over the past 15 years, I mean, are you at a point where you're going to do almost like $1 million in revenue?
In a year,
yeah.
You're saying? No, I'm not there at all.
Half of that almost?
Yeah. I've had years that I've done that. I've done those numbers. But COVID kind of fucked me. Not that sales have gone way down. I just started spending money. I'm like, I'm going to make mountain bike classes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm still kind of paying for some of that because the mountain bike world, it didn't click. And I don't even know how to market towards that. I like riding my bike, and I've learned to stay in my lane a little bit more since then.
Well, what you've achieved with everything that you do is incredible. And we could probably talk about it for a lot longer, but we're not going to, because at this point in the show, I have something that I call inappropriate questions.
All right.
Yeah, my guest this week, he helped make your career. He's every skier's favorite snowboarder, and he's the dude that blows every snowboarder's mind, period. Scott Stevens is also a really nice dude who's a snowboard nerd who loves contributing as much as he can to snowboarding, which is why he was stoked when I asked him to do inappropriate questions.
Sick.
Are you ready for question number 1 from Scott?
Sure.
How in the hell are you so good at everything? From mountain bikes, BMX, dirt bikes. You can hop on a skateboard and beat me and Grenier and skate, tramp skate, snowboarding, golf, because you've become an insane golfer over the years. Driving a snowmobile, crying out loud, running a business. It's pretty impressive. I want to know where your natural talent comes from.
Well, I tried to get that out of you a little bit earlier than asking what your parents' athletic ability was, but it seems like you have a natural talent for everything except for music. Where does it come from?
I mean, this is such a generic answer, but I really just try. Anything that I'm into, I put in 100% effort. And like snowboarding, filming, and all that really translated to the business because like you don't get shit done if you don't do it, you know?
Right.
And like the different activities Scott's talking about, I grew up on 2 wheels. Like that's what I did.
So it's no wonder you're a great golfer.
Yeah, golfer, I have no fucking clue. That's just literally repetition. If you hit enough golf balls, you start to hit the ball straight. That's my theory. Bikes, when we go back to my childhood, that was my freedom, was the 2 wheels. And I was super, like my cousin, really good BMX rider, and he could do wheelies. And I was like, I want to learn that. And I think you put in the time without realizing it, and that's how you get good at something. Like, I don't remember riding my bike a lot, but guess what I did every day is rode my bike.
All right, we will jump into question number 2.
This one's a little bit blander, but what's your favorite video section you filmed? I'd love to hear that. Personally, I really like the Ransack Rebellion, and I like the Brain Dead Heart Attack one too. What's your favorite video section you filmed?
Not inappropriate at all.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, I would say the one that like felt like I did what I set out to do was right brain, left brain, because riding backcountry and landing in powder was so not normal. Just growing up on the East Coast, and I remember like getting up to Alaska. Scott, he was up there a few days before me, and he built a wedge, and I was like, "Do you mind if I hit it?" And I went into a cab, and he was trying to do a cab 9, and I wanted to do a switchback 5, I believe, but I fucking just like blacked out on the way in and just ripped cab off my toes, even though I wanted to go the opposite way.
Right.
Just I got uncomfortable, and I felt like such a dick. But I remember I did a front 7 off of that jump. That like changed. I was like, holy fuck, I can land in powder. And it was just exciting for me. And that same trip, me and him both like kind of checked a bunch of like personal shit off our list.
Well, you guys were put on that right side crew, and that was like, I mean, you guys were really sending it compared to the left side, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like video parts, it's all personal shit. At least when I was doing it. As the years went on, I got a little smarter. Like I was doing shit that I was like, oh, I'm going to do this trick here. Like working with the filmer being like, this will make it look bigger. But at that point, I was just thinking about tricks and personal shit. And that was the video part that really like, I felt like I did what I set out to do.
All right. Well, we're going to jump into his final inappropriate question. And this one, I think, has a little bit of inappropriateness to it. So let's jump into it.
Do you remember mid-2000s drunk at the Vegas trade show and you told Jeff Brushy you had a better method than him? I think that's funny. Do you remember that? Because it's pretty vivid in my mind. And what's funny is you might. In my opinion, I think you do. But Jeff Brushy is an absolute legend of legends. But Chris, I think, in my opinion, you have a better method than him. Do you remember that? That's my question.
Did you say that to Jeff Brushy's face?
Apparently, yes. I do remember that night. It was like, we weren't invited to go to the trade shows. Like we just showed up. And for some reason, I don't know why I was like feeling extra confident that year going into the trade show. But I remember Red Bull had sponsored the rider polls. And there was an empty table and it was like Red Bull vodka on the house and all that shit. And I was just like, guys, let's just go sit here. And we got tuned up. And after that is when this all apparently happened. But at that point, somebody had like an elf camera. You remember like when everybody had those?
Yep.
And there was photos. And yeah, I have a feeling in my drunk mind that, yes, that happened.
That's amazing. I'm sure there's not too many people that walk up to Jeff Brushy and look at him and are like, hey, dude, I've got a way better method than you do.
It's pretty embarrassing, but it's also pretty funny because every time I see Pat Bridges, he was there also, and like it's still talked about. So better than nothing, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So those are Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And your story is so interesting to me because there was so much pain and almost learning by yourself in the beginning of everything. I mean, there aren't many people in the action sports world that I've interviewed who've had to deal with so much heavy shit and made it to be a success in the sports world as an athlete and an entrepreneur. And it's really all about your work ethic and learning from your experiences. And while you've had to learn from some shitty ones, it seems like all of that has made you create quite the life for yourself. And it's the American dream in snowboard form. And it was awesome to hear about. And I thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's been a hell of a ride. And I will say, like, to the younger kids, if they hear this, it's like, put your head down, and it's fucking crazy what you can actually do. And the only scary part about when shit starts working in life, time goes real quick. But when shit's not working, it feels like the days go slow. But thank you. I appreciate it.
So that was time with Chris Beresford. And for anyone with some talent that thinks they can't make it, look at Chris. He had all the chips stacked against him, but instead of feeling sorry for himself, he surrounded himself with his passions, and it all worked out. And while that's not going to work for everyone, if you have a dream and you don't pursue it, you will second guess yourself the rest of your life. Don't be that guy. Be Chris and force things to happen organically, if that even makes sense. And also, support Chris by heading over to dangshades.com and getting yourself a pair of affordable sunglasses that are just as good as the really expensive ones. That's the plug for Chris, and that's the podcast. And now it's time for the review of the week. And this time, it's a 2-star review titled Ditch the Politics, and it comes from Keenan F. Here's the review. At the beginning of the episodes, Mike goes off complaining about stupid political topics and whining about how his privileged life isn't as good as he wants it to be. Once you get past that part, the interviews are reasonably interesting. There is room to improve on the questions and the flow of the interview conversation. Well, first and foremost, thanks for writing that review. I think it's funny that you call out my politics, as I've said so many times how bad both parties suck and how women having their rights taken away is a fucking travesty. You don't want to hear that, which makes me assume that you still believe the old barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen kind of theory. I'm also going to guess that you aren't a fan of gay people, and I could go on and on. Shit, I bet you think it's dumb that I'm talking about my wife's cancer on the podcast, like it's a waste of your time. Whatever, fuck you very much, and please shoot me an email with your address and I'll send you a limited edition Powell Movement beanie. While I'm being a dick in this outro, I'm hoping you're a decent person, and if you are the things I said above, find another podcast to listen to. I don't want people who don't believe everyone is equal listening to this show. So if that's too political for you, fuck off and find another podcast. But I will have a great beanie for you to send, even if you do have to go find another podcast. If anybody else wants one of my last beanies, please write a review of the show on social media or iTunes or Spotify. Tag me, and if I read it on the show, you win. I thank you for doing it. I thank you for listening. And as always, please support my amazing sponsors who make this show happen. They are Elan Skis, Stanley, Outdoor Research, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.